a few ways that NGOs and the sector can encourage collaboration would be to model it themselves, to actively model it themselves. So there's nothing stopping us right now having some larger size organisations partnering up with some very small, agile, nimble organisations that might specialise, might have some really great knowledge in one particular area, whereas a larger organisation would be working across a broad spectrum and creating some cross-sector collaborations. Corporate world calls this skunk works. So setting up some quick innovation skunk works that have people from a wide cross-sector, both inside and outside your organisation, something that we can model. Also showing up to the communities of actors and entrepreneurs outside of our comfort zone. So NGO workers and executives and leaders can actually show up. It's easy to find out these days, jump online, register for some emailing lists, turn up like everyone else turns up, humbly, curious, not seeking to always be the expert in the room, but to be an active learner and learning practitioner. So let's show up when investors are talking, when entrepreneurs are talking, when government is talking, and let's be really bold about what we exclusively know and really value who we are and what we bring to the table, but understand that kind of wider, diverse, higher level ecosystem that we can be part of. So yeah, we can do those two things straight away. Yeah, a brilliant question and a real challenge as well. I suppose I don't want to be unclear either. Like, it's not just the NGO organisations that have that same social commitment and ethical and moral obligation. So what the world has done very clearly is stand up and say, I'm sorry, organisation, business, entrepreneur, executive, capitalist, money person, government, we expect you to actually be playing amongst the rules that we care about. And so if you're crossing the line, it's not okay, it's no longer okay. And actually our digitised, distributed, like hyper-connected digital world shows that a corporation like, when United Airlines had a host or hostess that then pulled someone off board and it was completely inappropriate and treated them in an inappropriate way, threw them off the flight, someone filmed that, it was uploaded, and I think within days the CEO had to resign. And so individuals and communities and societies are holding everyone up to a higher standard these days, and I think NGOs, if they flip that view, understand that we've got a real comparative advantage. We're used to that scrutiny. We operate from the basis of social license to operate every single day and have done for decades. So we've got an advantage there we can bring to the table. So innovation and understanding failure isn't about like carelessly just shooting from the hip and just kind of not caring about the implications and scattergunning and starting stuff that we leave and making commitments that we walk away from. There's actually a really good methodology to validation and invalidation, to prototyping and to learning by doing. There's a very strong methodology that best practitioners will understand and will help NGOs have in their system. If anything, that's far less risky than pretending that the status quo works now. The status quo, including how we take the time to measure and evaluate and line all the ducks in a row and have the gold-plated version that we can take to funders and stakeholders. And when the world played by those rules, that was the appropriate way to function. But our world doesn't play by those rules anymore. And everyone in the NGO space knows it. What used to work isn't working in the same way anymore. Projecting that forward, it's a very scary image. And I think it was Einstein that said, trying to solve a problem by using the same mindset that was used to create the problem in the first place is doomed to failure. So it's more risky to keep on keeping on the way we've always done. but we need to understand risk and de-risk our movement to innovation by working with really skilled operators who can help us with a good methodology and a framework that creates boundaries at the edges, loads of space in the middle, that brings the right players in, the right time frames, the right metrics and moments of truth. So we still have things to measure, they're just different. We still have a process to follow, it's just a different process. And there are trusted people who can provide that for NGOs. There is no doubt there are a couple of main challenges that are coming up time and time again in my work and in the insights and the pains of people that really care about communities but are struggling to adapt and to move. There's no doubt the speed challenge. When you're used to doing things that have like 5-year timeframes and potentially 10 and 15 year windows around how you exit something, trialling something as a pilot is often a 2 or 3 year process. So we're uniquely set up to succeed in that model, and so changing that quickly is really hard for NGOs. And so the speed challenge is tough, the culture challenge is tough. Boards are really struggling wrapping their heads around this. Some of the work that I've been doing is actually helping boards upskill themselves to think like investors and to consider themselves as a mini Shark Tank. So if you had to invest in XYZ, what's the mindset of an investor that's looking for success, different to only the mindset of governance purely? Investors have to do due diligence and they have a sharp lens on governance, but they also look at the upside. They've got a different lens and they have a different methodology that they follow. So helping boards on that transition is as important as helping executives and organisations unlock innovation from within, innovation from without, kind of trial by, learn by doing. And yeah, so I think the culture challenge, the skills that we have all brought into our organisations or that we've been recruited to bring in aren't necessarily all the skills that are going to help us get where we need to go right now. And so thinking about that carefully and finding others outside of ourselves to help us is really important. Understanding how we're going to keep our core going while we're also playing on the edges of the new, because the people we care about need that and can't wait. I liken it to like a cruise ship. Even a small to mid-sized NGO is like a cruise ship. It's kind of got a path and it's following that path. And the organisation might be small, but our stakeholders are massive, So it's a large cruise ship. But there's lots of little speedboats that are actually connected to the side of that cruise ship, and they can go off and back and off and back. As long as we're really intentional about, okay, who's driving the speedboat, who gets on and off, where do they go, when do they come back? So how do we allow that to happen on the edges and actually put a little bit of our intentional time and investment and resource into that? And how do we also keep the cruise ship going is really important. There's horizon thinking. So Horizon 1, Horizon 2, Horizon 3, an organisation called the McKinsey Group, globally have talked about strategy. When you think about, there are different horizons that we need to look at. Most of us as NGOs are really good at keeping our eye on Horizon 1. So what's sort of like right in front of us? And we build our structures according to Horizon 1. We also need to keep an eye on Horizon 2. What's coming that we actually kind of like, we know that we don't know, but we at least know that there's uncertainties and shifts in the context, and we've got to keep an eye to a different kind of horizon. So can we potentially have 80 or 90% of our investment and time in Horizon 1 and unlock 10 or 20% of some other things in Horizon 2 and allow some kind of agile team on the edges, speedboats, to come back and forward. And Horizon 3 is actually the horizon that we just don't know, and we don't know what we don't know, and it's unexpected stuff is going to happen, and we're going to have to accept the fact there's a whole heap of things that are going to just hit us between the eyes. Understanding those three things need to exist in parallel, and understanding what we might do from even our budgets, and our activity to allow our attention and to allow us to show up in each of those three spaces at the same time is really important. Easy to say, challenging to do, but there are some good models and some good case studies of where that's actually living and breathing in the real world. And I think locking in again to others outside of us that can help us with that is really important. I would embrace, honestly, the fact that they're uncomfortable. And that's really good because the people that we care about are uncomfortable. And actually, potentially our sector has represented a comfortable looking group of people showing up in a very uncomfortable world, facing very uncomfortable realities. Maybe us being in a bit of a minority position, maybe us being in an unsettled position, but a brave and courageous enough position to say, this is beyond us and we are really kind of challenged by this, but we'll show up and we'll put ourselves in that uncomfortable position, and we know we can't go alone. We know we can't do it in the same kind of even relationships that we've always had, so we'll put our hand up and say we don't know, and we, the experts and the captains of this industry, we don't know, and so we're going to actually say we do need help, and we're bold and courageous enough for that, because that's what the social or the purpose-driven entrepreneurs around the world are doing, and they're looking for us to show up. But we've got something amazing that we're all needed in this space. So being uncomfortable is great. I'm uncomfortable. I am not an expert. I've got my L plates on all the time. Being the most curious person in the room, very honest about what you do and don't know, what you have and haven't experienced. And of course, there's not one right way to do anything. And so I think that, kind of being open, curious, not falsely humble, but radical humility with a bit of radical kind of boldness at the same time is something that is needed. And people of passion, really committed to the causes that we're committed to, are needed in this space. And so join me and be like ridiculously uncomfortable, but just moving, refusing to let that discomfort paralyze us into being immobile. And we'll all learn from each other, and that's the exciting thing. There are so many stories we can all learn from each other, and if we can celebrate each other's wins and be alongside each other when we hit the tough times, that's actually a community of vibrant entrepreneurship that the NGO sector can model. That's a movement I want to be part of.